Welcome to JGTCR, I'm Cope, and today we are tuning the SLS AMG GT3 11. Let's get into it. In factory trim, this AMG handles extremely well. It is a race car, so we should expect as much. There is plenty of downforce to keep us on the black stuff, and steering is fairly sharp. There is a fine line between understeer and oversteer when driving this vehicle, especially when pushing to its limits. Rolling onto the throttle smoothly helps prevent wheel spin, but it can cause a considerable amount of understeer, while using a more aggressive point and go technique can avoid understeer, but is more likely to cause wheel spin and the tail end to step out. At the end of the day, smooth modulation is best for lap times and maintaining traction, and save pushing the throttle completely to the floor until the vehicle is completely straight. Under braking, this AMG is on point. It is very stable while braking, and braking and turning is not an issue whatsoever. In particular, the trail braking capabilities are phenomenal. Let's go get that lap time. 6 minutes 37.1 seconds. Let's get to tuning. The default race tune was pretty solid, as is the case with most race cars, but a few tweaks were made for the vehicle to better suit my personal driving style. The natural frequency of the rear was made slightly softer for better traction. The natural frequency at the front was made slightly more firm to allow the rear to take most of the weight shifting during cornering. Again, this is for traction purposes. We also added 0.5 negative camber angle to the front. This is to make up for the increased rigidity from increasing the natural frequency at the front, and it helps prevent understeer while cornering. Let's take it to the track. It's of no surprise that we've had a bump in all our stats. What stands out in particular is how much more harsh the power is put to the ground. The tail end does step out much more easily, but it can be controlled. Input modulation is the key. For best results, a smooth roll on and off to both throttle and brake is advised. This AMG prefers low to mid RPM. Control and traction exist in this space. Running into the high RPM frequently causes drift, even on long sweeping turns. So use caution when revving out and not in a complete straight line. Under braking, this vehicle is very solid. Braking and turning is still acceptable, and trail braking is as awesome as usual. Let's grab that lap time. Six minutes 21.2 seconds. And now drift tune. For this drift tune, we had to go a bit crazy with the toe angle and the camber angle. Under drift conditions, this AMG was erratic, lacked direction, and refused to comply with inputs. The body height adjustment is lower at the rear than the front, giving us a squatting stance. Our anti-roll bar at the rear was set to 1. This is to try and give us more traction while drifting, resulting in better directional drift. We maxed out downforce front and rear to help us stay pinned to the ground, and 100 points of ballast were added to the rear at a position of 30, again in an attempt to try and get us more directional drift. Let's drift Suzuka. What we have here is a failure to communicate. This SLS AMG GT3 simply refuses to comply with the very simple instructions we give it. Every step of the way, this vehicle is fighting us like a toddler throwing a tantrum. All of our efforts to stabilize the rear end have been in vain. This truly is Schrödinger's drift car. It is both gripping and slipping at the same time, and until we drift, we don't know which will present. To successfully drift this AMG, we must be very delicate with the way that we drift. If we turn too much, or accelerate too much, or not enough, this vehicle is ready to capitalize and ruin your drift. It is a very fine line between success and failure, and that's just not fun to drift. If we throw in some additional factors such as other vehicles in a drift lobby and multiple variables encountered on a drift pass, this AMG is just not making the cut. The SLS AMG GT3 is a very solid race car. In factory trim, it has more than enough power, downforce and handling to be competitive and keep most drivers happy. When modified, it becomes a better version of itself, offering more power and a more challenging drive. This AMG provides a good transition from beginner to intermediate driver. When it comes to drifting, this vehicle is best left at home. Even with more time spent on tuning, there is no getting around the fact that this vehicle has no desire to drift at all. The SLS AMG GT3 is good at one thing: racing. And that's perfectly fine. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing.